what's the latest news on the National Assessment of CSG chemicals? When's that one due to be released?
Thank you, Senator. We expect the assessment of chemicals to be published towards the end of this calendar year. We're hopeful that's the case. I think, as we mentioned last Senate estimates, some of the analysis has proven more complex than we expected. We've had to develop new methodologies. We've had to look broadly internationally for information on the various chemicals, as well as domestically, and industry has been quite helpful in providing additional information, which we've then had to analyse to see if it makes a significant difference. So all of these things have slowed down progress, but we are in the final stages. We're having expert reviews undertaken of various components of the analysis, so we're hopeful that this will be released towards the end of this calendar year.
Okay, thank you. Has it been submitted to the department by NICNAS yet? Are you in that departmental review phase yet?
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Has it been submitted to the department by NICNAS yet?
No, the department itself is undertaking the environmental risk assessment, and the Department of Health is undertaking the health risk assessment, and both of these need to be packaged together. NICNAS was the original project leader on this, and so continues to play a key role, particularly in ensuring that appropriate methodologies are used.
Okay, thank you. And is it the intention to use that national assessment to inform a nationally consistent approach to regulating chemicals, or are you intending to feed it through to state governments with an encouragement that they pay it some attention?
NICNAS is currently the standard setter for industrial chemicals, and so any approach would go through NICNAS. I believe that the ministers are considering whether there's an improved approach to environmental standard setting. That is quite close, but the responsibility of how you interpret the standards that are set by NICNAS is the responsibility of jurisdictions under their own individual legislation.
It's a fundamental issue for the states, though, isn't it?
No, she's just said it's NICNAS's responsibility as the regulator.
NICNAS sets the standards, but how those standards are implemented and the responsibility for this is now with future methods of doing this is really with the Environment Standards Division. It might be more appropriate to ask them. So NICNAS sets the standards, but how that's implemented in each jurisdiction is subject to individual jurisdictional legislation, and given the differing nature of geography and uses, that's appropriate that that's the case.
Okay, thank you.
But was the assessment done by the states or by the Commonwealth?
There's a risk assessment being undertaken by the Commonwealth of those chemicals that were used between 2010 and 2012 in coal seam gas. So it's not a broad assessment of all industrial chemicals that are in use. It's specifically addressing coal seam gas because at the time communities were concerned, and the government of the day responded to those concerns.
Thank you. In relation to...
1 more minute, Senator. What is that?
Okay, thank you. There's been some reports that the US EPA is advising the department about the impact of fracking on water supplies, and apparently are providing input to inform a new set of guidelines. Can you tell me if that is accurate? Where would those new guidelines fit in? Would they be mandatory? What's the time frame for producing those guidelines? And will they cover all fracking or just coal seam gas fracking?
Senator Matthew Whitford, Office of Water Science.
So, sorry, Senator, can I just clarify, was your question, is the US EPA advising the US government
Hence
or
my
the
question,
Australian
is
government?
that accurate reporting? No, is the US government working somehow collaboratively with your department
Is the US
fracking
EPA
guidelines?
advising our government? That was your question on
It's been
changes.
reported that that's the case. I'm checking the accuracy, and if it is accurate, can you tell me how that's going and
I'm sure
all the things I
we
asked before?
collaborate internationally, but
We do.
So the department does have a memorandum of understanding with the US EPA, and we have collaborated with them on this project. One example of that is through the peer review of the chemical assessment. The peer review of the risk assessment.
And can you answer all the other questions I asked as well, please? Sorry, that's my last question. So it was Time frame, will they end up as guidelines? How will the guidelines fit into the regulatory system? Do they cover all fracking or just CSG? And yeah, that was it. And are they mandatory?
Maybe I could start off and Matthew could add to it. We have been looking as part of the chemicals assessment project to develop guidelines that could be picked up by jurisdictions when those assessments are released. And we were looking to have some guidelines drafted for consultation processes at about the same time that the report goes out, so it can be seen to have a use and it can encourage consideration and debate. So that's currently in progress, but it's at quite early stage.
It is at quite early stages, and the US EPA has not had a role in developing those guidelines.
Okay. And was it just for CSG or for all fracking?
CSG, the chemical assessment is for CSG.
Just for CSG.
chemicals, yeah.
Thank you. If you can just on notice provide me any more detail about that, that'd be very helpful. Thank you.